who were here several minutes ago and had to endure sound check, all 7 seconds of it. I apologize for that, to make you endure sound check. It's imprecise, it's unprofessional, and it's not right. So I apologize. The rest of it will be me and completely all my fault. So, this is the first time I've ever been to Rebellion Fest. And so I got a few emails over the last few weeks, like, why is it your first time? And as far as I know, this is the first time I've ever been asked. I was asked last year, but then COVID, and so finally I'm here. And hopefully you'll take what I'm about to tell you with no irony whatsoever. I am thrilled and honored to be in front of you, and this is a show, in my mind at least, with an audience that is so unique than the audiences I am in front of usually. Tonight is show 197 of the tour that I'm on, which, thank you. We started in March of last year, and so I am now suffering from USA jet lag, New Zealand jet lag, Australian jet lag, and now British jet lag, all at once, so I hope not to fall asleep and face plant in front of you in the next 3 or 7 hours. And so I've been hauling around a lot of the same material night after night, as one does when one is on tour. However, I wanted to do something tonight where the show would be, to the most, for as best as I can make it, completely unique and not to be repeated. Because I think the audience is so rarefied, and this is a really cool night, and I wanted to honor this night and just not give you all the things I've been talking about night after night after night, month after month, for almost 200 nights. I've been telling some of the same stories. So I wanted to break away from that, since this audience is, again, it is unique in that we all love punk rock music, and some of us have been loving punk rock music for literally decades. And so there are a lot of conversations we don't have to have because we know things all so well. We don't have to talk about how great the Ruts are because we know how great the Ruts are. We don't have to talk about the genius of the Damned because we're fully informed on the genius of the Damned. We don't have to talk about this, and this because we already know. So there's a lot of like no-hand passes we can do and go to the head of the class. So a thing that has been occurring to me, I'm 62 years of age, so I'm dying in front of you. Like me and Dick Cheney and George W. Bush will all be dead by October. It's sad, but it is what it is. And so I have been thinking, now that I'm hurtling into senility, about to go live in the park, not able to find my pants, I've been thinking about the relevance of music in my life. And it seems to me, it occurs to me, the older I get, the more relevant punk rock music occurs to me. And so many, many years ago, I was born in 1961 to two parents who did not want kids. They were both hyper-careerist, workaholic, good-looking, incredibly intelligent people. To the left of my mother was Joan Baez and a wall. To the right of my father was Fox News and a wall. So they disagreed on everything except vodka. And so they got together at some point in 1960, and my mom probably put the move on my dad, hey, you fascists, let's do this. And they rolled around on the proverbial bed of hay. I become the proverbial bun in the oven. It's 1960 in the United States of America. And so like pregnancy without marriage is shamed. So they get married for appearance's sake. As soon as I arrive, they get divorced. I hate you more. And they never wanted to see each other again. They hated each other's guts. And so I was born to two people. Neither of them wanted a kid. Both of them wanted their careers. So I become the pain in the ass, hyperactive, screeching monkey boy, wasted on Ritalin for most of his young sub-adult life, and I would ping pong back and forth from my mom's apartment 5 days a week, my father's middle-class house 2 days a week, with his terrifying new wife, an ex-FBI agent, and her pedophilic, psychopathic son, my stepbrother, who did all manner of things to me. Don't worry, I'm fine. And so music became my refuge at a very early age. My mom was an alcoholic, and I think her misery needed company. So she would get one miserable, dangerous, pedophilic boyfriend after another, and they hated my guts. And so my mom, while being a psychopath and an alcoholic, was absolutely brilliant in that she loved really good music. And so while she wasn't freaking out, throwing plates against the wall, having some like exorcist like freak out on alcohol and cigarettes, She would listen to Bartok and Stravinsky and Glenn Campbell and Barbra Streisand and Diana Ross and all this really cool stuff. I was raised with all of that. However, I preferred my little record player in my room and my 4 Beatles albums, because the Beatles didn't yell. The Beatles on a record did not throw plates against the wall or touch me. They just played music. And so I got really into music as a way to cope with having an utterly terrifying and crap childhood. And I'm not trying to get any sympathy. I'm fine. And many of you have had a childhood that would kill your lawn and peel the paint off your car. I get it. But music was a big deal for me as a young person, because it was the one thing that didn't hit back. It was the one thing when I would go to school, I would routinely get mugged for being one of the only white kids at a mostly black school. So I get my socks taken, my shoes taken, my lunch taken, I get hit around. It was utterly terrifying. I like to be a skinny little kid and have a bunch of kids put their fists in your face. It sucked. And so I would get back to my room as soon as I could, close the door and put a record on and listen to the Beatles or a child's record like children's songs. And I raised myself in my room because the parental units were utterly terrifying. And so then I get put into a school in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And basically it's an all-boys prep school with a military posture to it. And the byline of the school, the way that you're supposed to understand the school is, if your son is a disciplinary problem, we'll straighten him out. You need your son to get his ass kicked every day? We'll kick that ass. And my parents went, there's an idea. So they sent me to this school. I went from 6th grade to graduation, which is 12th grade. So like age whatever to age 18, I'm in this place where I'm wearing this douchebag uniform, getting yelled at, called by my last name, completely depersonalized. And I watched kids who would mouth off, get picked up and thrown across the room, banging into a chalkboard and dropping to the ground. And so I thought to myself, I'll just keep my mouth shut until I'm 18 years of age, because I don't want to fly through the air and smash against the wall. And that's when music became even more important to me, because school sucked, and my parents sucked. And I didn't know anyone in my neighborhood because I went to a school out in the suburbs. And by the time I get back to the big city of Washington, D.C., all the local boys had picked me out as their figure of fun to push around. It's where I would get like alternate routes to get back to my mom's apartment so the kids couldn't find me and push me around. And so I'm getting shoved around by a lot of people, and I've got no male role model in my life going, there, son, it's going to be okay. So I had no confidence whatsoever, but I did have my records. I did have music. And I'll never forget this. I was in 10th grade, and oddly, by the time I'm in 10th grade, the people I could hang out with at this high school were the upper class people, like the ones who got straight A's, because they're nerds, and the ones who got appalling grades, like me. And we're all in the same gang because no one wants to hang out with us because we can't throw the ball straight. The cheerleaders don't want us. No one wants us. So I would hang out with the dumbest and the smartest people in the school. And I'm one of the dumbest, but some of my friends were some of the smartest. And these are like kids, like they don't have any friends. I didn't have any friends, they don't have any friends, so we kind of had a friendship in that. So at one point, I'll never forget this, I'm in 10th grade, it's like 1814, it's a long ass time ago. And one of these 10th graders, one of the real smart ones, he pushes his glasses up, he said, I'm gonna go home, it was a Friday, he's like, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna put on all my records. And no one said a single thing, like who cares? But I thought to myself, I know what you mean. And in those days, he is going to play all of his records. He's got maybe 3 or 4 records. This is before you're record collecting. He's got like this one, and this one, and he's going to play them. And I thought to myself, damn, man, that's exactly what I want to do when I get home from school on Friday. I can like leave the gulag for 2 days and listen to Led Zeppelin or Ted Nugent, whatever the arena rock I was listening to. And so those records became my soundtrack, and music became my happy place. Because the streets of Washington, D.C. in the 1970s were dangerous. The racial tension was such you could hack through it with a freaking machete. And my parents were not a resource for any kind of like goodwill or good intent. They were kind of scary people. And so I basically raised myself, and as soon as I could, I got minimum wage jobs so I could be out of the house, away from my mom's murderous boyfriends, and start making my own money. So I never would have to depend on my parents for an allowance. I never asked them for money. I was making my own. I was trying to raise myself to become an adult really, really quickly, because I wanted to be away from these people, because my life sucked because of them. And so, by the time I'm about 17 years of age, I have a best friend. His name is Ian Mackay, and you might know that name from the band Minor Threat and the band Fugazi and the label Discord. And Ian Mackay has been my best friend since I was 12 and he was 11. And we are both two old-ass men, and we are still best friends to this day. It is a friendship that is over 50 years. And so it is the single biggest accomplishment of my life. One best friend for over 50 years. And sometimes we talk about it like 50 plus years. That's a hell of a thing. And it is a hell of a thing. But it's still, people come and go. But every once in a while you get lucky and you meet someone who's like there to stay. And Ian is like, he's an incredible human being. I've learned a lot from him. And so he's going to the cool public school inside Washington, D.C. He's got boys and girls in his class, and I've just got nothing but boys who are like suburban kids. Their reality and my reality, they're not bad people. We're just very different. And so Ian found out about punk rock before I did. I just knew that it was this crazy music, and I'd never heard any of it, but it looked really interesting. Ian went to school with people who actually had the records. And thanks to Ian and a few of my skateboard buddies in the neighborhood, they loaned me Ramones albums and Clash records and the Sex Pistols and on and on and on. And so we found out there was a punk rock record store in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. in a place called Rockville, Maryland. And you drive out Wisconsin Avenue until it turns into Rockville Pike, and you go to 1327J in a strip mall, and there's Yesterday and Today Records, owned and operated by Skip Groff. And Skip Groff produced the first ever Minor Threat record. He produced my first record. He taught Ian where to get a record pressed. So Skip is a huge guy in our lives. He also did multiple times a year buying trips to England, and he would come back with suitcases full of punk rock 7-inches. And we would wait for him. We would be at the door on Sunday when he would open the store and let the first people in there get the first crack at all this UK vinyl that he had brought back. And this is how Ian Mackay and I found out about the Adverts and the Lurkers and Buzzcocks and on and on and on. And this was the music we had been waiting for. Certainly the music I had been waiting for. And these people became my heroes. Because like no one is smarter than T.D. Smith of the Adverts as far as writing a lyric. He is kind of amazing and relentlessly amazing because he still makes records and they're still really good. Like the song My Place became my personal anthem. When T.D. says, from writers to scientists, it's all the same, their facts a twist. I've been hit by passing fists, but this is where I'll stay. Here it is, all around me, my place. And that described my life as a minimum wage cog after I left my mom's apartment upon graduating from high school. And so I identified with this music so hard, I thought it was going to break the bones in my body. And so that was 40 some years ago. And I look up to these people even more now. And so I was the one in our little group of skateboarding people who had a job. In fact, I had like 3 or 4 jobs. I'm the overachiever type. So I had a few extra bucks. So I'm the one who's buying the import LPs because they cost a day's pay. Because they're coming all the way across the pond to Washington, D.C. And I'm the one who got the first Damned album before anyone else did because I could afford it, because I had a bunch of boring ass jobs. And so I was buying these records, and Ian Mackay and I would play them in his mother's stifling attic, where Ian had a small bedroom, and we're listening to The Damned, and the UK Subs, and Sham 69, and on and on and on. And we're like, best record, best record, best record, best record. And somehow I understood that this music was going to be with me for the rest of my life. And as a young person being raised with no confidence whatsoever, being told I'm basically crap every single day by teachers, by parents, by people on the street, I had to look up to somebody, so I identified with these outsider people making this music. And around that time, we found out there's a microscopic punk rock scene in Washington, D.C. And Ian and I were like freaking pilgrims going to these shows, and you find there's like 11 other people just like you. They can't throw the ball straight, and they're really weird, and they're really interesting, and you go over to their house, and they put on a record like, here's a band called Wire, what's that? And you listen to that, and you're like, that's gonna work? And you start networking with these people. There's no internet, and hardly anyone had phones, so you get your parents' phones. And so we started to get to know other people, and this music became a bigger and bigger deal. And suddenly, punk rock bands from England are coming to Washington, D.C. Usually they would come to New York, turn around, and go back to England. And somehow we prayed to the right God, and punk bands from England started coming to Washington, D.C. 999 was one of the first bands that made multiple trips to Washington, D.C., and I cannot thank them enough for that. All of those records are fantastic, and the band live was out of sight. And they showed up, and they kept showing up, and then we kept showing up. And around that time, the Cramps, the legendary band, the Cramps, they were a New York band, 5-hour drive from Manhattan down to Washington, D.C. They acted like a local band. They would play in Washington up to 4 times a year. And we worshipped the Cramps. And because they were just like one of the best bands you're ever going to see in your life. You're probably younger than me. You probably didn't see what I got to see. But it was really, really good. And the records were really, really good. So I'm buying these records. I'm going to the shows. And I'm realizing how much better these shows are than the arena rock I used to see. I used to go see, I saw Led Zeppelin. It was good, but not as good as watching the Bad Brains open for the Damned in June of 1979 in Washington, D.C. And we had been told, we got our ears to the ground, we're trying to get all the intel we can. We've been told there's an all-black punk rock band in Washington, D.C. called the Bad Brains, but none of us have ever heard them, but they're out there somewhere. And so we find out the Damned have found out about the Bad Brains, so the Damned have requested that the Bad Brains open the show when they come to Washington, D.C., giving us a chance to see a band from our own city. But that's how divided Washington, D.C. is at the time. And hours before the band makes this legendary appearance at the Bayou, which is this big rectangular box where you get beaten up half the time, Ian MacKaye is underage. And so Ian MacKaye and I work in his mother's kitchen all afternoon devising a fake ID for him. So we take a Polaroid photo of his face, because we're going to make a fake driver's license, and we cut the Polaroid head out of the bigger part of the Polaroid thing, which unleashes all the chemicals, which starts to destroy the image of the face. So by the time we've actually made the fake ID, Ian's head looks like this weird potato with eyes. It doesn't even look human. And so it's not going to work, but we're going to go give it a shot anyway. He was 17, I was 18, so I got a driver's license, I'm walking in. Ian, we're going to have to keep our fingers crossed. And Ian, he's a pretty crafty guy. He shows the bouncer at the front of the venue, the ID card, he's just kind of hey, there it is. The guy would go inside. So we totally pulled it off. And I wonder, Ian's a pretty sharp guy. He probably still has this thing. It was utterly ridiculous. And I think Ian MacKaye's younger brother, who's 14 or something, the Damned saw him outside of the Bayou. They opened up a window and dragged Alec through a window to get him in. And so before we walk into the venue to see both bands play, we notice these really hectic guys putting up flyers. It was the Bad Brains putting up Bad Brains flyers for a different show. We thought, they're black and punk rock. It must be them. And it was. And so there's 100 of us, because in this venue, the place sold out. But they sold out for the Damned, not the Bad Brains. And so the doors opened, there's about 100 of us in there, and the Bad Brains walk onto the stage. And they're 20-something, 19. It's one of their first ever shows. And most of the audience ran to the back of the dance hall. Me and Ian and a few of the Discord types, we went right to the front, lay it on us. And the Bad Brains play a 30-minute set that, in my opinion, reinvented the wheel. And they played a song called Pay to Come. And I'll remember, it's 96 seconds of sheer perfection. And the song comes to an end, and HR does a standing backflip and lands on the one holding the mic. That's not possible. And what the hell was that song? What just happened? And then they finish their set, and a while later, the Damned come out, and the place is packed, and it is fantastic. Captain Sensible comes out with no clothes on except for the guitar, which he completely pulls up, flips everyone off, and moves the audience going, spit right here. Oh God, what's gonna happen? So I'm on that side of the stage right there, and I'm forgetting what song it was, but Dave Vanian saw my head and went, I'll keep time to this song on that guy's head. It's So I have lumps on my head because Dave Aney is pounding my young brain with a microphone. I have never enjoyed being pummeled by a man so much in my life. And so the audience is getting drunker and drunker, and the band is playing incredibly. And then at one point, someone throws a pint mug or some kind of beer bottle through the audience, and it lands on Ian MacKay's sister Katie's head. And she's like this amazing blonde-haired woman with fantastic hair. Kabam! This bottle breaks on her head, cuts her open like a 1968 downtown Washington, D.C. riot participant. The blood is everywhere. People are like she's gonna bleed to death. And she's angry, like, who threw the bottle? Like, you're gonna die, you're gonna die. Rat Scabies sees this beautiful blonde woman in the audience bleeding. So of course he makes a play, like, hey, and he comes to the front of the stage and he hoists Katie onto the stage and runs her backstage. The band finishes the show and we get to logic with the bouncers. We have to stay because his sister's back there with the band. You can't throw us out. And so they let us stay, and that's how we got to hang out with the Damned after the show, because they were taking care of Katie's split open head. We still had to drive her to the hospital after the show. And so this ended up being one of the most pivotal nights in our lives, and it was all because of music. And so we had to do some investigating on the Bad Brains, and what the hell was that song? All because it was something like, like what happened? And so finally we met the band, and I'm one of those guys. I went right to him, sir, I need to know what the hell is going on with that song. And I literally sat down with HR with a piece of notebook paper and a pencil. I still have it. And I made him dictate the lyrics to me so I could understand. I make decisions with precision, locked inside this man collision just to see the what to be is perfectly my fantasy. I came to know with no dismay that in this world we almost pay to write, I pay to play, I pay to come, I pay to fight. A long time ago, let's say a long time ago, all we know, something like, I'm forgetting that middle verse, I'm sorry. And then it comes to the end, and so is now we choose to fight, to stick up for a bloody right, the right to sing, the right to dance, the right is ours, we'll take the chance. And I was like, that's gonna work. And so maybe if you're a record collector nerd, you've seen the original pressing of the first Bad Brains, 7-inch, and it's Pay to Come on the A side and Stay Close to Me on the B side. Their attempted radio commerciality breakthrough. And so the record was pressed in New York, and they can't get the record from New York down to DC because no one in the Bad Brains has a car. So they go to Ian. He's got a car. Ian has brains, and he knows the Bad Brains are talented, but they're crazy. So he said, and they're like, yo, Ian, let us use your car. He's like, absolutely not. Henry, let us use your car. Here. And I gave them the keys to my wounded 1968 VW Fastback. And Ian said, what have you just done? You're never going to see that car again. Like, but they need to bring the record back down to Washington, D.C. He said, you're such an idiot. Like, okay. The Bad Brains came back a few days later with the record. And payment, they gave me my car back. And they gave me 4 singles, and well, 2 of them got stolen. So I got 2 still. So the reason why that record got to Washington, D.C. was my wounded 1968 beautiful blue VW Fastback. And that's a minuscule Bad Brains factoid. And so these things started happening for me more and more, when the best moments of my life were associated with music. And so one time Sham 69 played in New York City, and Ian and I load into his car. It's like me and all these DC punk rockers. We stuff ourselves like sardines into Ian's car, like a 1429 Dodge Duster, and we go like trundling up to New York City, and we see Sham 69 play at a place called Hurrah with a band called the Reds opening. And after the show, Ian said, we've got to talk to Jimmy Percy and tell him to come and play in Washington, D.C. and not stop in New York, and to tell all the other punk rock bands to play in Washington, D.C. We're going to go backstage and we're going to talk to Jimmy Percy right now. I said, how the hell are we going to do that? Like, come with me. And Ian just walks backstage, and seconds later we're standing in front of Jimmy Percy going, Mr. Percy, fantastic show tonight. You need to come to Washington, D.C. He's like writing it all down. Like we're nuts. And we're trying to spread this music like gospel because we wanted people to hear this. And this is why I want to talk about this kind of thing with you, because maybe in your life you met someone who hasn't heard The Damned, or they haven't heard The Ruts, or they haven't heard the UK Subs. And like, oh, sit down. And you want to bring them into the fold because this music is going to make their life better. And they might get it, they might not, but oh, you try to get them to see it your way, to take their ELO records and throw them onto the fire and get some real music going before it's all over. And this is called grooming, but it's also evangelizing. And I know I've done it more than once. Every once in a while I get an email from some youth like, Henry, I hear that you really are into music. Can you send me some music? I sent the kid like 6 gigabytes of music. I have stolen so many albums from so many bands and sent them to people for free, trying to help them. I sent a bunch of Dinosaur Jr. records to a young man in Salt Lake City years ago, and I met up with Jay Mascis, and I apologized for stealing from him. I said, Jay, I took 6 of your great albums, put them in a folder, and sent them to a young man in Salt Lake City, Utah, to make his life better. Are you okay with that? And he said, yeah. And so it was fine. I was in Sri Lanka many years ago, and I'm staying at a family's house. And it's a cool family. The young kid, the 16-year-old kid, he recognizes me from my many misdeeds on MTV. He was like, you're that guy who was painted red back in the last century. I said, yes, young man. I said, are you into music? He's like, every day. I said, what are you into? He said, death metal. Like, I'm an idiot. I'm like, okay. Is there such a thing as Sri Lankan death metal? He's like, yeah. I said, can you play me something? He's like, yeah. I said, fine. I stole all his Sri Lankan death metal onto my hard drive. I said, now let me give you some useful ingredients. And I gave him a whole bunch of really cool music I think a young person should be listening to. And I went out with his father that afternoon to like drive around the city. I was in Kandy up in the mountains of Sri Lanka where they grow the tea. And we have an interesting historical afternoon. And I get back to the house and I hear the Misfits like just pumping inside this guy's room. And he comes out with this huge smile on his face. I said, so, you like any of those records I put onto your desktop? And he looked at me and he said, The Stooges. I'm like, oh, so you like the Stooges? He said, Funhouse. I'm like, how old are you? 16. 16 years old and you like the Stooges? I thought to myself, that poor dad. Because 2 more years of adolescence, and you're high on the Stooges, you're going to take your father out on the front lawn and give him the beating he really deserves. And so I have to account to Iggy Pop, the undisputed heavyweight champion of rock and roll, that I have stolen from him. So I see him in somewhere like, Iggy, I gotta tell you something. Okay, man, what? I said, I stolen something from you. Like, okay, like what, my act? I go, no. I gave a young man a full copy of Funhouse, put it onto his hard drive in the mountainous region of Sri Lanka. Oh, wow. Did he play it? I go, he played it. He loved it. The Stooges are going to be his favorite band. We've converted yet another one. He said, hey, man, thank you for thinking of the Stooges in the mountainous region of Sri Lanka, man. That's really far out. I said, so do I owe you $1.25? He went, no, that's okay. I'm not like the drummer in Metallica. It's fine. I'm kidding. Take it easy. He's a nice guy. And so this music means so much to me. The older I get, the more it means to me. So I'm living this double life. I'm working at a minimum wage job, hating my life. It's a boring job. I'm eating bad food. My car's now dying. So I'm walking 3 miles to work, 3 miles back in the cold and the heat and the whatever. My apartment is split with my roommate, a guy I knew from back in the day. And so our little apartment smells of his laundry, my laundry, and his low-grade marijuana. It's kind of miserable. And so I'm now 20-point-something years of age, and I realize I'm all grown up now, and this is the rest of my life, working at a job scooping ice cream or doing something else boring, and one day I'm just going to die. Like, this is my life. It's going to be punishing, repetitive, boring, and it's going to kill me before I'm dead. And I've never thought I'm anything special, but at that time I thought, I'm so angry. I've got so much energy. There's got to be more for me than just scooping ice cream and coming to this place and putting on a freaking apron every day and taking the money to the bank every night and then walking home. There's got to be more for me. And so Ian calls me and says, hey, Black Flag, this band that we liked, Black Flag is coming to the East Coast of the United States. They're playing in Washington, D.C., and they called me, and Minor Threat's going to open, of course, and they're also playing in New York. Here's an idea. How about we get in my car and drive up to New York and see them in New York and then see them in Washington, D.C., and so we can see them 2 times instead of 1 time. I said, well, yeah, and so we all pack into Ian's wounded car, and we drive up to New York, and we see Black Flag for our first time with the legendary Des Cadena on vocals. And I remember standing in the middle and the back of the venue, and the band comes out, and they start into a song called I've Heard It Before, which has this insane build-up, and it's like getting the crowd really, really antsy. It's really intense. And someone yells out, like, kill a hippie, like there's some like stupid statement. And Chuck Dukowski goes up to a microphone like, they're going to kill him! And everyone's like, he didn't really mean it! And you realize this Black Flag group are really dangerous people. And so finally the music starts, and I'm watching this band, and I'm hating every second of it because, oh, I loved it so. And because they're angry, just like I'm angry. And the songs are twisted and supreme. I'm like, I want to be in this band. But that's never going to happen to me. They've got a singer. I've got an ice cream scoop. And so we see the band, and we're driving back. Like, he says, so what do you think? I'm like, I think I'm obsessed with this band, and I think I wish I never saw them. Well, then don't go see them in D.C. Of course I went. And I watched Des Cadena sing with Black Flag 2 more sets, and I watched it with a lump in my throat, like, I want that job so bad. Because I would go back to an ice cream scoop and no opportunity to yell and vent my incredible amount of anger. And so life goes on, and at one point Black Flag comes back to the East Coast. This is June, July 1981. I'm 20-point-something years of age. And they're not going to play in Washington, D.C., but they are going to play in New York. And so I get in touch with Chuck Dukowski, and I said, hey, man, I want to come up and see you guys in New York. Can you put me on the guest list? And he went, of course, man, no problem. And so I begged my boss for a night off, and he begrudgingly gives it to me. I'm the head manager of his ice cream store. He doesn't want to let me out of his sight too much. So I drive up to New York City. I hang out with the band. I help them load their gear in to Irving Plaza, legendary dance hall. Been around since at least World War II, and they're probably having a gig in there tonight. And so I watched the gig. Some band called the Bad Brains opened. It was kind of a pretty good night. And so the night comes to an end, and I'm helping the band carry their gear back out to their van. It's kind of like being in a band, but not really. At least you get to touch their equipment. So I'm hoisting all this stuff and throwing it in their van, and they love a free roadie. And they say, hey, we're going to go about 4 blocks down the road and play a second show at like 2 in the morning for like $150. Why don't you come with us? I'm like, why not? And so I follow them a few blocks down the road to 6th and A, and I help them load their gear in. I watch a man get stabbed, so I'm like, wow, that's New York City. I'm like, the guy gets stabbed, like, he's bleeding, and I still have to load the gear, like, and you're bleeding to death. Just take the gear and load it in. And so they load up on the stage, and they stack the gear, and they power it up, and they're going to play songs in front of about 50 sullen Lower East Side punk rockers and me. And so the band goes in, like this amazing set. I'm standing in front of a stage about this high, looking at the band as they're looking at me. And I'm looking at my watch, because I gotta go. I gotta drive 5 hours down to Washington, D.C., make sure my car does not explode, and somehow get myself to my job, scooping ice cream. And so as the songs go on, I'm getting closer and closer to screwing up getting to my job late. And finally, it happens. I really, really have to go. And so I look up at Des, I go, hey, I really gotta go, man. Could you guys play a song for me? And Des is a really good guy, great singer, great human being, amazing guitar player. And he goes, yeah, what do you want to hear? I go, you guys have that song about going to work called Clocked In? I need you to play that for me because I gotta go to work. And Des is a go along, get along kind of guy. And he says, hey, everyone, this song is for Henry here. It's called Clocked In, and it's about going to work. And we're playing it for Henry because he's gotta go to work. And I don't know what the expression on my face was, maybe pity. And so Des looks at me and he just hands me the microphone, like, you like the song so much, you sing it. And he hops off stage and I hop on stage holding this microphone. And I look from side to side and members of Black Flag see there's a new singer on the stage for a song. I'm like, okay, Henry's here, this will be interesting. And I always had a theory about Black Flag and how the singer should conduct himself. And I thought that this song should be sung with far more violence and far more fury, where eyeballs come out of the skull, where blood comes out of the mouth, nose, and ears, where the singer dies after every song, such as his sacrifice to the moment. And so now I have 96 seconds to make my case with this theory. And the band goes into the song. I kind of know the lyrics, and I go for it the way I think a Black Flag song should be sung. Dentures coming out of mouths, guts liquefying, lots of blood. And so I go for it, and I remember two things distinctly. I remember Greg and Chuck looking at me like, whoa! And these angry Lower East Side punk rockers who don't know me from Adam like, we're awake now. And so the song comes to an end. I hop off the stage and give the mic back to Des, like, well, see ya. And I exit the venue stage left, get into my wounded car, and make the long journey back to Washington, D.C. And as I drove hour after hour, it occurred to me that I have really screwed my life up, because I've had a life of no confidence whatsoever. However, for 96 seconds, I felt like a fish finally dropped in the right ocean. It was as cool as I thought it would be to be in Black Flag. It was a minute and a half, but it's over, and it's never coming back. And I wish I didn't know how good it was, because it was better than I thought it could be, and it's over. I basically flew too close to the sun, and it's like one of those perfect examples of be careful what you wish for. And so I get back to the job, I don't have time to take a shower, so I hose myself off in the work sink, I steal a fresh shirt from my boss, I put on my paper hat, and I start slinging ice cream with a lump in my throat, like I shouldn't have done that. And the next day my depression is even more profound, and the landline in the building rings, and rarely did the phone at Haagen-Dazs ring. It's either an employee who won't be able to make the night shift, so I have to cover for them, or it's my boss worrying about his money. So I'm one of those corporate guys. Good afternoon, Haagen-Dazs, may I help you? It's a member of Black Flag who somehow found the phone number of the Haagen-Dazs I worked at in Washington, D.C. And he says, hey, Des no longer wants to sing, he wants to move to rhythm guitar. We're now auditioning singers. You were pretty crazy the other night. You want to come up to New York? We're still here, and you can audition to see if you can be in this band. So I have enough time to inhale and exhale a yes or a no. And so as I'm inhaling, I go through 20-point-something years of humiliation and fear. I've never had a confident day in my life. Never once have I thought to myself, I've got this. Never. I work out of desperation not to fail. I don't think I've got this show. I think it's mine to screw up. It's for me not to waste your time. So it's for me to keep it real at all times. But never once do I think, hey, watch this. I don't have that. I've never had that. And so I have to take the sum and total of my life of never being told I'm anything at all except an idiot. And I have to exhale a yes or a no. And so if I say yes, it seems to me, I'll go up to New York, I'll audition, I'll flame out incredibly, I'll be the laughingstock of Black Flag, they will get a new singer, they will play in Washington, D.C., I will go to the show, because I'm kind of a fan, and I'll watch for an hour and a half someone who's not me singing those songs. Then they're going to make their first album, and I'll buy it because I'm a fan. And there'll be someone doing 17 songs who's not me on that record. And then 40 years later, I'll still be at Haagen-Dazs, and the internet will have been invented, and some deep dive journalist from Mojo magazine will come in with his shoulder bag and his cell phone. Excuse me, are you the man who auditioned for Black Flag in 1981 and didn't make it, and now has that as an albatross around his neck as he still scoops ice cream in the same place he did back in the days of Reagan? Yeah, that's me. I want to do an article about how you screwed your life up wanting to do something and you screwed up when you had the opportunity. Would you talk to me? Like, that's going to be me. Because I'm going to go up there, I'm going to screw it up. So the smart thing for me to do is say no, because I don't want to screw up and like be humiliated yet again. I'm so good at it. But then and this is all in about 2 seconds. And then I also realized that I could have this job or a job just like it for the rest of my life. And maybe this is my life finally starting. And it's not for me to wonder for the rest of my life what could have been. It's for me to try, to dare. And that is not something I'm good at. I'm not a tough guy. I'm not getting in anyone's face about anything. But I thought, this is it, man. Like, you can make something of yourself, or you can do what you always do and just pull back and wonder what could have been. So I exhaled. I said, when and where? They said, tomorrow, 10 a.m., and they gave me this address. And so I told my boss the next day, I'm taking the day off. I didn't ask, I told me. I think he kind of admired me for getting in his face. And I took the Amtrak train up to New York City. I meet Black Flag at a restaurant on the Lower East Side. And I said, so what are we doing? They said, we are going to finish eating, and then we're going to go to a practice place that we've rented for 2 hours. We're going to set up the gear, and you're going to sing every song we know 2 times. I go, but I don't know the lyrics. They're like, that's not our problem. And you're going to sing those songs as best you can, and then we're going to have a band meeting and decide your fate. And so I'm in the van with these guys. We go to the practice place. I load the gear in. They stack it up, and suddenly I'm standing in front of the new 2-guitar lineup of Black Flag. There's Des on guitar, and Greg Ginn on guitar, and Robo on drums, and Chuck Dukowski on bass, Spot on the side taking photographs, and Mugger the roadie hanging out. And I'm holding a microphone in this hand. I literally took these 2 fingers and I pinched my arm, because I thought, I'm dreaming. I'm not standing in front of Black Flag. This isn't happening. And I did that, and they walked, they go, did you just pinch yourself? I'm like, yeah, because I don't think I'm here. And Greg Ginn said, what song do you want to play? I said, let's do Police Story. It's a perfect song. And the band goes into Police Story, which you can look it up. It's got one of the best intros. And it's a lot of intensity. And they go into the song. I mean, that guy can write some music. So they go into the song, and all the blood rushes to my head, and I nearly fainted before I got a single word out. I was that overwhelmed. But I held on. And we played for like 90 minutes, and I sweated through all of my clothes. I'm 150 pounds of aggravation, and we come to the end of it, and I had a great time, which means it probably sucked. And they went, all right, go to the front lounge of the practice place. We're going to have a meeting and decide your fate. And so I go, and I sit down on the couch in the front lounge of this place called Mi Casa. And I figured they're going to whip out the skull and the candles and the sacred verses and sit in a circle and read from the text and come up 2 or 3 hours later with the word. I sat down, and about a minute and a half later, every member of Black Flag comes into the front lounge and stands in front of me. I'm like, uh-oh, quick jury, I'm out. They go, you're in. I said, in what? Black Flag. Who? You. Me? Yeah. Doing what? The singer. Who? You. Me? Yeah. Doing what? Like, it went around and around until finally Chuck Dukowski said, do you want to do this or not? I'm like, yes, but you have to admit, this is rather sudden. Like, are you telling me I am in your band? They're like, yeah. I go, okay. I was completely dumbfounded. I said, so what do I do? And Chuck Dukowski gets in my face like, you go back to Washington, D.C., and you hug your little mommy goodbye, and you give away all of your stuff, and you quit your job, and you take these lyrics, and he puts this huge folder of lyrics, and you memorize these, and you take this tour itinerary, and you find us, and you leave Washington, and you meet us as soon as you can, so you can learn the songs and go to Los Angeles, so we can make the first ever Black Flag LP. Got it? And I'm like, go! And I stagger out of this building. Thank you. It's the stuff of a screenplay that this happened. So I'm back at the Amtrak station, it's the train station, and I'm up this train going back to Washington, D.C., a solid 4 hours of solitude with Black Flag lyrics. And I don't really know them, so now I'm reading them. And they're 2 sides of a brain. Greg Ginn is very emotional. Chuck Dukowski is basically, let's just hack people to pieces. Let's give everyone guns and say, hey, let's let people figure it out. And so it's 2 kinds of danger. So I'm reading these lyrics like, this is more than I can handle. I get to Washington, D.C., it's before the days of the internet. And so I call Ian. We usually talk every day. So I call, he's like, where have you been? Like, where were you yesterday? And I said, I have to tell you the story. And I told him the story. I could hear audibly his jaw hitting the ground. He said, "You're the singer in Black Flag?" I said, "I think so. So what do you reckon?" He said, "You're going to be great. Don't worry about anything. I'm going to help you." And he helped me. Like, I gave away most of my stuff. All of my records went to Discord House and lived with Ian for 20 years. And he got rid of my bed and all my stuff. And then I go to my boss, "Steve, I quit." He said, "I'll give you $4 an hour instead of $3.75. I said, "It's not the money, man." And I explained what had happened. I go, "This is my shot. It's time for me to go out into the world, and this is a chance." He said, "You know what? It is a chance, but here's what's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. The band